Привіт, привіт, привіт. Вітаємо у Ukrainian Voice of the Rockies. Привіт, Колорадо. Привіт усім у цьому штаті, українцям, друзям України і тим, хто просто цікавиться нею. Мене звати Марк Дилан. Я разом із групою, яка називається Ukrainians of Colorado. We are starting this new podcast with hope. We hope to bring you a new show every week that will have important and useful and interesting information. There's a lot going on in Colorado. There's a lot going on in the United States. And there is so much going on in Ukraine as it fights to defeat aggression and liberate its sovereign territory. If you are like me, you find that a lot of news about our community and about Ukraine is not available in regular news media. Or, if it is available, it's hard to find. What we want to do is bring this news to you here every week on this podcast. Now, some of you may remember a radio program called Ukrainian Voice of the Rockies. It was broadcast at a certain time every week. But a podcast is something you can listen to whenever you want. All you need is an internet connection and access to Spotify. So, все, що вам потрібно, це інтернет і доступ до Spotify. Тож, розслабляйтесь, слухайте зараз скільки хочете, і потім у будь-який момент повернетесь і дослухайте. Now, today's show is very special. We have Pani Areta Kolode with us. Pani Areta has very deep ties with Colorado, going back decades. She has a tremendous knowledge of the evolution of our community here. We'll be talking with her in just a few minutes. But first, I want to tell you where we're recording from today. We are in a new studio at the East Community Center in Littleton, in the same building where the Kobzar Ukrainian School is located. In fact, just down the hall. This studio is run by the Binning Family Foundation, and our friend Sean O'Shea is letting us use it. And our new friend, Kaya, is helping me today get this podcast off the ground. As for Kobzar, the school began last year and meets every Saturday. Andriy Matyashuk is director of the school, and Andriy also will be joining us later in the program. So, we want to start off with a few items of news. Today, October 4th, in Longmont at the Vance Brand Civic Auditorium at Skyline High School at 7 p.m., Ukrainian pianist Anna Shelest will be performing Piano Concerto No. 1 by Serhiy Bodkevich. If you come at 6 p.m., 1 hour before the concert, you can hear her give a talk about this beautiful concerto. That's tonight at Skyline High School in Longmont. You can get tickets at the door. Then, next Saturday, a week from today, October 11th, right here at the East Community Center in Littleton, we will have from noon to 2 p.m. a program called Healing Hands and Raising Voices for Ukraine. Dr. Lev Pristupyuk, a Ukrainian physician on the front lines, and Dr. Gary Morsch, founder of Global Care Force. Global Care Force is this great organization out of Kansas. They will be talking about their work helping Ukraine. Jeremy Hubbard from Fox 31 News will moderate. There is an auction now underway to provide medical aid, hospital supplies, etc. This is actually an online auction going on right now that supports this work. You can find out more at the Ukrainians of Colorado Facebook page. So that's Saturday, October 11th, noon to 2 p.m., East Community Center, Littleton. Check it out. So, what else is going on? So much. A bunch of brave Ukrainian fighters, veterans wounded in action, is undergoing rehabilitation at the Adaptive Sports Center in Crested Butte. These are amazing people, and we are so pleased that they are receiving care in our state. Slava Ukraini. Another brave fighter for Ukraine, Oles Gorgon, was giving talks last week at the University of Denver Korbel School and at CU Boulder Political Science Department. So a shout out to Professor Sarah Soke for hosting Oles and allowing me to sit down with Oles to talk about his experience. Here's our conversation recorded earlier. So it's our great honor to be speaking with Alex Gorgon, who is here in Colorado. He's giving talks at the universities. He was at Denver University yesterday. Today he is at the University of Colorado in Boulder. And he speaks from the standpoint with the perspective of a defender of Ukraine, of a fighter in Ukraine's armed forces, but also as someone with a background as a civilian, not a professional soldier to begin with. But now he has spent most of the last 4 years as a fighter, and this is his first opportunity actually to take a break from the war, and he chose to come to the United States so that he could talk with Americans and supporters of Ukraine about what is going on and why Ukraine needs American support. So Alex, thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.
I just want, since our time is limited today and you're going off, I think, to Utah or someplace tomorrow or the next day, I want, if you could just tell us what is the most important thing for us to understand about the war today, and what is the most important thing for us to do to support you.
Thank you for inviting me, and the most important things which I really hope that all people who met me will understand that this war is not just war between Ukraine and Russia, and it's not about territory or people who speak in Russian language as it's proposed by Russia. Indeed, Ukraine today is a battlefield of the global conflict, and this is a clashes of time between past and future. And what we witness now is the attempt of a few tyrannists who are trying to conserve their power in their countries to use the war and global military conflict to stay by the power as long as it's possible for them. And with this meaning, they're trying to use war to shut down any opposition in their countries and have no institution of open society there. And that's why what I would like to see the awakening of the America in the sense that they not just helping Ukraine, they helping themselves. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I'm trying to ring the bell, to raise attention to this issue that we have to be united, we have to be common in one response to this really, really critical challenge.
Thank you so much. I'm thinking of your remarks today and yesterday, speaking to graduate students in Boulder and in Denver. They clearly want to know more about what is going on. They clearly show enthusiasm and support for Ukraine. How do you think the Ukrainian community in the United States can help? What is it that they can convey to the population at large about their country, about their culture that is so important?
Well, the Ukrainians in the United States has to be on the edge of the activity, because if Ukrainian will be not so active, why Americans has to be active? So that's why they have to show an example of different kind of actions, because a lot of people I met just ask, okay, I'm ready, I have extremely high level of motivation, but what kind of activity do I have to take? So give me models. So that's why the Ukrainians has to teach other people how to act, and they have to show how to make pressure on those congressmen and senators who is not in favor of Ukraine, who is trying playing with Russia, who has this kind of illusion that Russians are good and we need to give them chance and it's possible to reload some relation. There is not. It's no place for illusions like this, because there is no bad Putin and good Russians, or Russians or Putin who can be good for United States. Not at all. So that's why Ukrainians here has to show those way of activity which can be so efficient and acceptable for all Americans who stands in favor of Ukraine.
Можливо, декілька слів українською мовою для наших українців?
З задоволенням. Мої сестри і брати українці, я радий бути на теренах Сполучених Штатів сьогодні тут. І, як сказав Марк, я безперервно воюю майже 4 роки, але я не вважаю це перервою чи паузою. Я тут, тому що саме тут, на цих землях, вирішується доля нашої великої битви, оскільки тільки завдяки спільним діям, великій допомозі Сполучених Штатів, Україна має можливість виграти швидше і меншою ціною. Вже малою воно не буде, ми втратили дуже багато прекрасних людей, але меншою ціною. Україна може легко виграти, і ті наступальні операції, які ми мали на Харківщині і Херсонщині, показували, що коли в нас є достатньо зброї, ми легко повертаємо землі і змушуємо ворога бігти. Тому сьогодні найбільше прохання до вас – робіть тиск на усі інституції урядові, які є в Сполучених Штатах, для того, щоб вони відчували, що вони мусять допомагати Україні, оскільки це спільний інтерес усього вільного світу. Стояти сьогодні за Україну – це не значить обирати сторону, це значить боротися за свободу і справедливість в усьому світі.
Дуже дякую, Олег.
So now we're back from that recorded interview. Let's welcome our honored guest, Pani Areta Kolode. Pani Areto, vitayomo. For our listeners, I want to explain that we have with us one of the pillars of our Ukrainian community in Colorado. Pani Areta has a long association with the University of Denver, where she was a researcher, librarian. She is an educator, a board member of the Ukrainian Catholic Church here in Denver, and an active member of PLAST. She grew up in Cleveland, and I have to say, I lived a year near Parma, so that was probably the first time when I was a kid that I met any Ukrainians. I don't remember that specifically. I was very, very young, but I had to have met some Ukrainians at that time. In 1976, Pani Areta came with family to Denver from Chicago. She volunteered with the Colorado Ballet. She is a pastoral council member, a member of the 1993 World Youth Day Planning Committee. And she was editor of a publication called More Informed at St. Thomas More for 20 years. So, вітаємо, and thank you for being with us.
Дуже дякую за запрошення. Мені дуже приємно тут з вами буде поговорити. І дещо вам можу розказати про українську громаду тут у Денвер. Цікаве є це, що якраз ви починаємо за свій подкаст, коли українська громада буде святкувати 75-ліття заснування громади тут у Денвер. І так як кожна громада майже в Америці починалася від церкви, так виглядає, що і наша українська громада почалася від церкви. Коли всі українці після Другої світової війни приїздили і оселилися по більшості на Сході, в Нью-Йорку, Філадельфії, Клівленд, Чикаго, мало хто приїжджав до Денверу. І тут приїхало кілька поодиноких осіб, які дуже затужили за чимось рідним, спеціально, щоб вони знайшлися в чужому середовищі, не вміли мови, і почали вишукувати через українські газети, через своїх знайомих, чи є якісь інші українці, чи випадково не приїхали до Денвер. І так, по якомусь часі відшукалося 13 родин. І тих 13 родин тоді вирішили, може, треба запросити якогось священника, щоб їм приїхав відправити по українську службу Божу, бо вони чужо чулися в чужих церквах. І тоді той наш епископ з Філадельфії Константин Богачевський звернувся до священника, який був в Омага, Небраска, отець Блажйовський, який приїхав тут 8 жовтня, відправив першу службу Божу в 1950 році. І ця служба Божа була відправлена в катедрі непорочного зачаття, яка є на Колфакс і Логан. І вони там першу службу Божу відправили в такій маленькій каплиці Святого Павла на Логан.
Вибачте, I have to ask a question now, because you're describing this origin of the Ukrainian community in Denver. You arrived about 25 years later, right?
Yes.
What was it like when you arrived? What was that community already pretty firmly established?
By 1976, when we arrived in Denver, the community was already established. There was a pastor here. They had the church. They had organizations that were already around the church, civic organizations like Plast and Ukrainian Women's League.
Wow.
There was Naukowe Towarystvo Shevchenko, which is the scientific society of Shevchenko.
Yes.
All these existed already, but it's these 13 families that had nothing and started from scratch. At first they had, after having the few services at the cathedral, the Polish church in Global, St. Joseph's, agreed to share their church with the Ukrainians until they could find a church for themselves to buy. So consequently, they were having their masses, their liturgies at the church, including their concerts and whatever the gatherings in the afternoon. The Polish church was very gracious to allow us to do this until they purchased the building, which was a Quaker prayer house, meeting house. And that also was done with the help of and generosity of the Roman Catholic priests who gave the down payment for the church.
That's just an amazing story, because here you see help coming not just from the Ukrainian community, you see the Polish community, the Roman Catholic, perhaps non-Ukrainian community, Quakers even helping. That's amazing.
Well, this is, I think, is the history almost of all American.
Yes.
Because remember, the first pilgrims that came to to America and landed in Plymouth Rock in 1620 were also a religious community that fled persecution in England for their religious beliefs. And they came here and settled as a religious community around their little church.
Right.
And then you see the same thing happening in the other churches, the Polish church, the German church. They all were gathering with their own little group of people because that is something that they could relate to, people that they spoke the same language, had the same customs. І то їм було більше виразно розуміти і себе пізнавати так, як бути в цілком чужому середовищі.
I have to ask a question that I should have asked at the very beginning, because this is a question that everyone I meet asks me first. When I say, I'm from Ukrainians of Colorado, they say, oh, how many Ukrainians are there in Colorado? And you mentioned the Shevchenko Scientific Society. I think at one time they tried to estimate where Ukrainians live in the United States. But I don't know. I've seen estimates from like 20,000 to 40,000. What would your guess be? How many Ukrainians, people who identify as Ukrainian heritage people, how many are there in Colorado?
I think the latest statistics that I found were around 12,000 people in Colorado, mainly around the Denver area.
Right, right. But I think maybe it's changing a bit because we have more people coming into the state. They don't all settle in Denver. They may go to the Springs. They may go to
I think that's
Collins. I don't know.
I'm not sure myself, really.
We had this unusual situation this past year. There was an American from Colorado who did a documentary film about Ukraine called Ukraine Under Fire. And he showed the movie at the Ouray Film Festival. And so we tried to get the word out, but we didn't know, are there any Ukrainians near Ouray or Ridgeway, those towns? And sure enough, there were families who came from Montrose all the way to Ouray to see the movie. We had no idea that they were there. So I guess one of the things that we hope to do with these podcasts is to reach people who otherwise we don't really know about.
See, that's it. We don't know because some people don't really identify themselves as Ukrainians right away, and they blend into the society that they're in.
Well, they're trying to blend in, right? They're trying to maybe...
Well, like we all blended in.
Yeah.
We are of Ukrainian heritage,
yes,
but we are Americans.
Yes. And what advice would you give to people, say, who have come now to Colorado under different circumstances? There's so much has changed. What advice would you give to them about, you do want to blend in, you want to maintain your own identity as Ukrainians. What is the way to do that today?
I think it's important to be part of the group that you come from. If you are Ukrainian, identify with the Ukrainian group. Mm-hmm. Go to something that is familiar to you. It will make you a better citizen of the country in general.
It will make you a better American.
American.
To be a better Ukrainian.
Because you will know who you are, what you stand for, and you don't have to, and you feel that you have a contribution to make.
Right.
Otherwise, if you're bashful or you sort of don't want to acknowledge the fact that you're of a different background than someone who was born here, that gives you an inferiority complex.
Right. Yeah, I think it's so important, and so many people have learned this. We're a nation of immigrants, basically.
We are.
And so every community that has come here has had to say, okay, I am from country X, I'm of this nationality, but I want to become an American. So I want to become an American without getting rid of all the traditions, all the history, all the family ties that I have.
I agree. I totally agree with you. That you need to be able to identify with your own group first and know who you are.
Yes.
And then you can make a contribution to the society.
So when you think about those 13 families back in the early 1950s, they're coming here right after the end of the Second World War. Maybe they've been in camps or something. They've had really big struggles. Those struggles are worth remembering. Has any family written their history of what happened to them, how they got to Colorado? Does that history exist any place?
Unfortunately, I don't know of any. That anyone has written anything about individual families that initially came to Colorado.
I think one of the projects that has impressed me recently is this little poster behind you is done by an English American, a guy from Great Britain who moved to the United States, married to a Ukrainian. And he has a group called Svidok. And what they do is they record like the oral history of Ukrainians, not just in the United States, I imagine, but including the United States. And if we have those oral histories, that's a way for people, especially the younger generation, to understand where they came from. We have at the University of Colorado Boulder, there's a Ukrainian club. And these are kids of all different backgrounds. I know them a little bit. But what they share in common is they have this interest in Ukraine, in their own background, but they may not know that much about it. And that's the thing that, to the extent we can repair that, we should repair it. We should make available that information, don't you think?
Well, that would be great, but people, unfortunately, like I said, they're, even in the church history here in Denver, other than knowing who the pastors were and what organizations were, there's nothing written about any of the families in particular that came here that we would know a little closer story
Right,
of their life here.
right. So,
Other than, we know there was a Mushinsky Art Gallery, for example. They were here for a number of years since the mid-1960s.
right.
Until their passing. They were the ones that brought some Ukrainians closer.
Because they had art from Ukraine?
They were all artists.
Ah,
It was the father and a daughter and a son. All three of them were
Wow.
artists. And their father was very active also in the Ukrainian army after World War I, when they started forming the Ukrainian army under Petlura. The son also studied art. He was a famous portraitist because he painted pictures of very, very famous people. Some, like the Prince of Liechtenstein, I believe, was one of the portraits, and several other important personalities in Germany when he was there. Plus, the son was a landscape, the daughter was a landscape artist. And a great, also, Mr. Mushinsky Sr., Volodymyr, was also an icon painter.
wow. So,
Unfortunately, when the gallery closed and the family passed away, the family that they had lives in North Carolina. They took all the artworks with them, and I have no idea what happened to it. They were going to open a museum in North Carolina with the Mushinsky paintings.
well, if there are any Muszynskis out there listening to this, we'd like to know where those paintings are, and we'd like to see if we could bring them to Colorado.
Well, that probably would be a great possibility because I'm even in touch with some of them.
Really?
Yes.
Well, you know, we have some painters in our community. We have Victor Kmil, who does, I don't want to speak in a way that's not correct or accurate, but Victor, I think, was trained as a dentist, but he took up painting fairly recently. And when we had this film showing in Uray that I was referring to, we had Victor's art that he had donated, and people came and they purchased his art. And those donations, those sales, went to help the various causes that Ukrainians of Colorado is supporting. So to see Ukrainian art, whatever style, whatever background, is a good thing. That would be something that people would really enjoy.
Well, I think there is if we want to pursue this, we certainly can, because Muszynskis, like I said, there is a family that lives in Carolinas and would be willing to cooperate and bring some of these paintings for exhibit.
I recall some story about art that either belongs to the Denver Museum of Art or one of the big museums in Denver that was mislabeled as Russian, but the artist was Ukrainian. Do you know that story?
No, I did not hear about that.
I heard about this several years ago, and now I'm going to have to go back and figure out who that reference is. But that's been one of the other issues, is that things which were in the popular culture of America, let's say, once regarded as, oh, well, that's Russian. Now people start to understand that, no, that wasn't Russian, that was Ukrainian. That thing that we saw, that piece of music or whatever it might be, that wasn't really Russian music, that was Ukrainian music. And that's one of the challenges, I think. You know, there's this big movement now to establish Ukrainian studies at campuses around the United States and elsewhere. And that's something that we want to draw attention to. I think Professor Sarah Sokhe at UC Boulder is one of those persons who is keen on seeing that happen.
Well, even going back in Colorado, we're talking about the Ukrainian community here that began post-World War II.
Yeah.
There are records here in Colorado that there were Ukrainians in Colorado in the 1890s.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, they had a church near Calhan, near Pueblo. And the reason that church does not figure as a Ukrainian church is because the first immigrants that came here in the early 1800s came from the Transcarpathian
I
region.
thought you were going to say that.
And Galicia.
Yes.
These people were called Ruthenians, or Rusins, as they
Rusins, yeah,
as they called themselves. Americans at that time, Rusin, Russian.
Of course.
So they weren't going to dispute that because they had no idea what these people were talking about. So yes, Russian.
Yeah.
And consequently, it made me interested in researching a little further about the church that's in Calhan, because it is called the Church of Transfiguration, and supposedly this is how our current Ukrainian church is named, Transfiguration, for the continuancy of that. However, was it truly a Catholic church, or was it the Orthodox church?
Is it still standing?
And I believe it is still standing, and if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Muszynski might have done some work on the iconostasis there.
No kidding.
But that was something that I discovered very recently and couldn't even bring a closer look at that for this interview because it was too late.
So listen, people who are listening to this podcast, if you have any information that can help us, please let us know. There'll be a way for you to do this. We will be posting this podcast on Spotify, and then we will also be posting a video of this podcast on YouTube. So those two ways you'll be able to respond, especially on YouTube in the comments section, so that we are able to follow up with you and maybe talk about this once we find out more information.
More information, that would be very interesting. And the only way I thought of doing this would be perhaps to contact the Stamford Library.
Oh, at the Hoover, you mean, or where?
Stanford Diocese.
In Connecticut.
In Connecticut.
Yes, yes.
To find out if they have any history of the church being established in Colorado that as a Catholic church. Because if it wasn't a Catholic church, then they wouldn't have that information.
They wouldn't have it. So you could almost logically figure that out.
Figure that out. But like I said, I didn't have enough time. When I came across this information, I thought, oh, really? I didn't even know that. I'm talking about the Ukrainian Catholic Church as it exists today, celebrating 75th anniversary this month.
Thank you for coming back to the 75th anniversary. I think you mentioned that at the cathedral, the Catholic cathedral, there'll be some recognition of this as well, correct?
It will be, but perhaps much later, because our bishop is not in the United States. The bishop that we belong to in Chicago is not in the United States. He's
so
out.
He has to come back first.
He will have to come back first to really have.
To kind of pave the way for that.
Yeah, well, to really have a real, spontaneous celebration.
Yeah. Well, let's keep this conversation open on this point about the 75th anniversary, because we have to mark it in several different ways. I know that our friend Andrei Matashuk is trying to go around with the cameraman today, and I think he's going to ask you a couple of questions about the 75th anniversary too, and hopefully what is produced will be a product that can be shown at whatever commemoration we have. So I think it's a little bit up in the air what exactly we will do, but when we do it, we will have a podcast in the meantime, and we will let people know when and where and what it will be.
All sounds great.
Thank you so much. Дуже дякуємо, пані Areto. It's been so marvelous. Really, велике задоволення мати цю розправу з вами.
Дуже дякую за запрошення. Я не знаю, що я зробила, щоб собі заслужити на таку честь, що я перша тут приходжу і представляю ці справи, але в кожному разі я готова вам допомогти, в чому тільки можу.
Дуже дякуємо. Thank you. Okay, that was wonderful. Thank you.